Mumai viewing herb an S-rank resource. Crystal Springs. As time bled into twilight, the sun, high in the zenith, began its slow descent from east to west. The first day of daylight was drawing to a close. Throughout this initial day, Ethan had dispatched several Tier 1 and Tier 2 vicious beasts. Yet, he hadn't actively hunted them. They had scattered upon his approach, and he had let them go. His true objective lay deeper within the labyrinth to find something far more formidable. Consequently, his haul of evolution points was modest, only 3,000 for the entire day. The next morning, Ethan pressed onward, delving into the depths. Soon, they encountered a colossal hippopotamus, a second-tier high-rank creature, foraging in the undergrowth. The beast was an unsightly mass, its sheer size making it look grotesquely out of place. Perhaps it sensed the intent behind Ethan's thoughts. Its thick limbs slammed into the earth, generating an unstoppable aura as it charged rapidly toward him. "Right," Ethan murmured, a faint smile touching his lips. "Then I shall play with you." He retrieved the Cold River sky-splitting spear from his spatial ring, infusing it with source energy, and swung at a blur that felt less like an attack and more like a whirling vortex of wind and ice. The giant hippo charged, but Ethan adjusted his stance to evade the impact before lunging forward suddenly. The Cold River spear pierced directly into the massive bulk of the hippopotamus. In an instant, the beast seemed to plunge into an icy abyss, its agility plummeted dramatically. Ethan pulled back the spear without hesitation. The giant hippo knelt on the ground, emitting a pitiful, guttural cry. Another strike followed. The massive creature, now grounded and struggling, slowly began to lose its vital energy. Ethan had slain the second-order high-grade fierce beast, giant hippo, earning 700 evolution points. The following day, the hippo quietly succumbed amidst Ethan's relentless passage. For the moment, no trace of a third-tier fierce beast could be found. However, the few second-order high-grade beasts he had encountered were more than enough to keep him occupied. On the second day alone, Ethan accrued 6,000 evolution points. Combined with his previous gains, the system panel now displayed an impressive total 11,000 points. The third day approached nightfall. Sensing a powerful presence nearby, Ethan's pupils widened slightly, a flicker of excitement sparking in his eyes. Based on the residual chi he had detected, it was unexpected on only the third day that he would encounter a third-tier fierce beast. "You scoundrel," Ethan muttered. "You can actually run this far just looking for scraps." This beast was entirely new to him. Though he couldn't visualize it, his Menvidergy provided enough feedback. It possessed the general outline of a three-headed dog. Just as Ethan prepared to charge, an unexpected turn occurred. The creature seemed to notice him. Even while squatting down to drink, it snapped its head upturned and bolted into the wilderness. Ethan was momentarily bewildered as the three-headed dog steadily retreated. According to Tao theory, only fourth-order vicious beasts or exceptionally rare spirit-type creatures possessed such acute environmental perception. Was his research flawed? Or was this beast something far more unique? Regardless of the mystery, Ethan would not let it escape. He intensified his use of mental energy and expanded his search radius. They quickly located the Cerberus, but to his surprise, the dog's detection range was immense, approximately 2.5 kilometers. After running for some distance, the three-headed dog finally slowed its pace. Clearly, it could no longer pinpoint their exact location. Ethan began using Ice Extreme Flash, dashing forward like a streak of cold light. Upon realizing he was closing the gap, the Cerberus bolted again at full speed. But how could its desperate sprint compare to his own? 1,000 meters, 800 meters, 500 meters, 300 meters. Seeing that escape was impossible, the dog was forced into confrontation. Ice Burst Technique. Ethan lacked the patience for a prolonged struggle and opted for swift finality. The next moment, the Cold River spear easily pierced its skull. A massive sound of shattering ice echoed through the clearing. The three-headed dog instantly exploded into a pile of crystalline shards. Ethan had slain a third-tier lower-rank vicious beast. Cerberus 6,000 evolution points. 6,000 evolution points. Ethan blinked, surprised by the system notification. Of all his third-tier kills, this was unprecedented. Even the most formidable beasts had yielded only around 4,000 points. Moreover, it was a creature of such muscular, enormous build. How could such a subtle detail be worth 6,000? Is it because of its superior detection ability? Ethan speculated. He continued forward. Ethan had slain the second-tier middle-stage vicious beast, King Tanuki, earning 200 evolution points. He also slew the second-tier middle-stage vicious beast, Mudkip, for another 200 points. About 2 hours later, Ethan discovered a massive cave, temporarily constructed from piled branches, weeds, and pebbles. The underground area was still damp from recent rains. He noticed something immediately. The footprints etched into the muddy ground were identical to those of the three-headed black dog. This huge cavern must have been its work. "It's getting dark," he murmured. "I should rest inside first. I will take this opportunity to examine how well the black-winged three-headed dog is constructed." Stepping into the cave, his eyes instantly lit up. Above the entrance was a large opening, allowing bright moonlight to stream through. Directly beneath this aperture lay several stalks of grass, mostly green, but each centered around a brilliant, bead-like bud. At the heart of these few blades rested a clear, emerald spring. Having learned from his previous encounter with the S-grade blood-surging grass, Ethan knew instinctively that these were medicinal herbs. He recognized them as S-grade moonlight viewing herb, an excellent medicine for rapid wound healing. They all looked identical, sharing the same designation, S-grade moonlight viewing herb. So Amanda breathed, suppressing a wave of overwhelming joy. He then turned his gaze to the clear blue spring at the center. Ethan's intuition screamed that this water was anything but ordinary. As expected, Hart in Shen University, app detected at an S+ rank resource called Jade Spirit Spring, which possessed the effect of enhancing mental energy. It seemed the reason for the three-headed black-winged dog's extraordinary detection ability was its prolonged consumption of this Jade Spirit Spring. "Cool," Ethan whispered, a single word conveying his profound satisfaction. But just then, he sensed another presence, the unmistakable arrival of a vicious beast. Most critically, the ferocious beast was less than 500 meters away. Based on the faint echoes of mental energy, Ethan knew he faced a colossal lizard roughly 2 meters tall whose body was coated in hideous blackish-red stripes, and from its tail erupted plumes of dark crimson flame. How could my mental detection fail? The thought flashed through his mind. In the next instant, however, recognition struck him. This creature was called the Shadow Fire Lizard. Judging by its sheer size, it was a mid-tier fourth-order beast, possessing a potent ability to disrupt and weaken mental perception. This explained why he had been blind to its presence until now. "They are less than 500 meters away. I only have 2 choices." He assessed the situation quickly. Given our current predicament, the crystal springs remains paramount. After all, it is an S-grade resource capable of profoundly enhancing mental strength. With that resolve, Ethan spread his hands and unleashed a specialized ability, the fastest technique he had ever mastered. A large, finely sculpted ice and snow materialized instantly in his palm. It raced upward, accumulating rapidly upon the underground crystal springs. With his current mastery of the 4th-level profound nether ice soul body, this feat should not prove too difficult. By the time the Shadowfire Lizard reached the cave entrance, Ethan had already secured his position. He lifted the crystal springs, now encased in a solid block of ice, with his bare hands and, with a mere thought, stored it within his spatial ring. The remaining primroses. Ethan sighed softly. There was nothing he could do about them. There is a saying, "Don't bite off more than you can chew." A mid-level 4th-tier beast, and one of the fire variety. Ethan was simply no match for it right now. If they couldn't escape later, that would be catastrophic. Failing to obtain the primroses, or the spring water, was a minor setback. The greatest danger was the risk to life itself. Mobilizing the ice elemental energy within his core, Ethan unleashed his A-rank skill, Frozen Shield. An icy barrier immediately encased him. He followed it up by using Ice Flash, propelling himself backward. The cave, a haphazard structure of rubble, weeds, and dead branches, was hardly sturdy to begin with. Ethan easily shoved the creature aside, causing the back wall to crumble and the entire cavern to collapse in dust and debris. The sudden cloud briefly obscured the Shadow Fire Lizard's vision. Once the choking dust settled, the beast flicked its long tongue out, choosing a path of random predation aimed at capturing Ethan. An ice-type ability user would make for a particularly satisfying meal. Ethan sprinted with desperate speed. He even consumed a speed pill. He didn't have time to spare a glance at the map. I can't run anymore. It probably can't keep up. When his legs finally gave out, Ethan slowed, gasping for breath. Though physically exhausted, a strange sense of satisfaction settled over him. This result isn't bad, is it? The evening primrose, which could heal injuries, held little appeal for him now. Since the day he awakened his powers, and through so many arduous times, none of them had suffered any serious wounds, far from needing S-grade herbs to recover their losses. Where have I ended up? He hadn't been able to check the map while escaping. Now, Ethan was utterly lost. Just as he reached for the spatial ring, his fingers brushed against a sudden sound, two voices speaking nearby. Judging by the volume, the pair were heading in his direction. To avoid alerting any potential enemy, Ethan froze, holding his breath and focusing intently until his movements became almost imperceptible. In the profound silence, Ethan not only saw the two figures but could clearly discern their conversation. One was gaunt, the other robust. "Hey, King, here to smoke. Are you sure you'll get into trouble?" The skinny man questioned, his tone laced with palpable unease. "What are you afraid of?" "Only I know this cave entrance," the fat man retorted, a hint of smugness in his voice. "I went through considerable trouble just to find this spot." "Want some? If not, better get back quickly." Unlike the skinny man, the fat guy wore an expression of utter indifference, the look of a seasoned veteran. "That's true," the skinny man conceded. "All we do every day is patrol. We've doing it for a month now, and there has been absolutely nothing." Hearing the phrase patrol, Ethan seized upon the key point in their words. Could it be that something profoundly important lay nearby? His gaze sharpened with sudden focus. Then, the two figures seemed to drift into a haze of memory. It brought back memories of his childhood, a time when he had been intensely curious and once considered whipping his father. He had tried it, found the experience bitterly unpleasant, and never entertained the thought again. A cigarette was lit. "By the way, the fat man began, "I haven't asked you yet, why did you come here?" "Smoking all the time is so boring." The two started chatting, with the robust man taking the lead. "It's nothing much. I just disliked someone, so I killed his whole family. Rather than being caught and executed, I preferred to join this group." The skinny man's face was perfectly calm. Showing no trace of regret, he then turned to the fat man. "Brother Ming, what about you? Why did you come here?" "Have you ever been with a woman?" the robust man suddenly asked. "I've played with a few," the skinny guy replied casually. "But none of them were particularly beautiful. Me, I just enjoy a few tricks to torment young girls. I've killed about 20 or 30 of them. When things got exposed, I joined this group through some connections." A hint of lingering satisfaction crossed the fat man's face. "You know what? You really shouldn't believe it. Watching them being tortured and enjoying their desperate expressions gives me immense pleasure. If we weren't already unable to leave, I would definitely take you with me to try it out, but my brother Ming is still my brother Ming," the skinny man affirmed, giving a thumbs up in praise. "Perverg." Ethan clenched his fists until his knuckles were white, his brow furrowing deeply. They had tortured 20 or 30 young women to death. The fat man spoke of such atrocities with such casual detachment, even tinged with enjoyment, was shocking. It would be nearly impossible for any normal person to remain so composed. Wait a minute. But Ethan suppressed the immediate urge to strike. He might still glean some vital information from their conversation. It wasn't too late to act. "Lucas, what you think is the true purpose behind all this sudden influx of personnel?" The lean man's curiosity was palpable. He pressed the question again. "I heard that some kind of experiment requires a large number of people, but I have no idea what sort of experiment it could be." The fat man spoke, his tone laced with uncertainty. It was evident that while he possessed connections within this industry, they were far from extensive. Patrolling, joining the effort, hiring personnel to conduct experiments. Ethan, who had remained in the shadows, seemed lost in deep contemplation. "What does that sound like?" The phrase resonated with a chilling familiarity, a term that had left an indelible mark on Ethan's mind: the black blood cult. "Let's try using our mental powers to sense it first." Ethan activated his skill, detective technique. Surprisingly, everything in the immediate vicinity registered as normal. Nothing anomalous could be detected. One more time, he mobilized his mental energy once more. The feedback was clean, devoid of any abnormality. In the past, Ethan would have dismissed this as a lack of anything unusual nearby. But now, after the incident with the shadow fire lizard, his thoughts gravitated toward a far more sinister possibility. Mental perception is being blocked. Just as Ethan was deep in thought, a voice broke through the tension. "Brother Lucas, let's hurry back through the cave entrance. It won't be wise if we get discovered." "All right," the fat man agreed. After a brief exchange, they decided to retreat. During official patrols, they carried specialized tools designed to sense mental energy, allowing them to detect outsiders preemptively. But now was their rest time, not their duty hours, so naturally, those sensitive instruments were stowed away. They had simply slipped out of a hidden cave entrance to smoke and alleviate the monotony. If discovered, the punishment would be excruciatingly severe. Thus, they kept their stay brief. Back to the cave entrance. Ethan raised an eyebrow. He had caught the key phrase. "Do these two know about some secret passage?" They turned back toward it, prompting Ethan to follow. According to his growing suspicions, there was a very high probability that this nearby area was nothing less than the base of the Black Blood cult. If they truly stumbled upon such a facility, their lives would be irrevocably altered for better or for worse. There was an old adage, nothing ventured, nothing gained. While confronting an incomplete, ferocious beast wouldn't drastically reduce the evolution points gained from its demise, it offered negligible bloodlust. More importantly, a base of this nature must house countless powerful beasts, as experiments require extensive resources. Ethan felt a thrill bubble up at the mere thought. The two men had just finished their smoke break, and were now moving quickly, their guard perilously low. They remained oblivious to the fact that another person was trailing them. As Ethan followed deeper into the area, he finally realized something profound. Where moments before there had been nothing but ordinary trees and bushes, taking a single step forward caused the entire scene to undergo a dramatic transformation. Before his eyes, the primeval forest dissolved instantly, replaced by an enormous, monolithic black building. The sheer scale of the structure instilled a deep sense of unease. It felt as if countless lives had been extinguished within its walls. "Is this what high technology is? It can do this," Ethan muttered to himself, stunned. Following the two men, they slipped through a hidden passage and into the building's living quarters. This passageway lacked even basic surveillance cameras. No wonder, if there were cameras, how could they possibly have gotten here undetected? If caught, wouldn't they face severe punishment? It was a perfect confluence of convenience for them, and an absolute boon for Ethan's infiltration. Once inside the massive black structure, Ethan activated detective technique once more. The building itself provided a powerful shielding function. Inside, without that shield, he could perceive everything with crystal clarity. The Black Blood cult members included 52 first-tier ability users, 17 second-tier, and 4 third-tier, but none were 4th tier or higher. Most of the rooms were laboratories. This confirmed that this was an experimental base for the cult. Many awake individuals who hadn't become superhumans were currently being subjected to experiments in these very labs. No, to be more precise, they were subjects. These awakened people were treated as mere resources. Much like Black Blood cult's method of breeding ferocious beasts, that Thomas had mentioned earlier, a piece of flesh cut off and replaced with a beast's tissue. Even organ could be harvested and swapped out for one from a creature. These people are truly insane. Ethan frowned, his disgust evident. Yet, the dot numbers were not the primary focus. It was the ferocious beasts within that commanded his attention. There were over 500 of them, some still breathing, others barely clinging to life. First tier, second tier, and third tier specimens were all present. Moreover, they were highly concentrated in the southeast quadrant of the building. First tier beasts held dozens of evolution points, second tier, hundreds, and third tier, thousands. The cumulative potential for evolution points was simply staggering. Realizing this immense cache, Ethan's gaze hardened with fierce determination. Suddenly, an accident occurred. "Brother Lucas, I'm in a bit of a hurry. You hush first, I'll wait for you." It turned out the lean man needed to relieve himself. He stepped aside and immediately unbuckled his belt. "Lucas, don't look at me or I won't be able to pee," the thin man whispered, a hint of genuine embarrassment coloring his face. Indeed, Being stared at in such a vulnerable moment was deeply uncomfortable. "Okay, I won't look. You're just too young, you wouldn't let me look." The fat man mumbled, then deliberately turned his head away. With the pressure released, the thin man began to ease himself out. As he returned so, he glanced back and happened to spot Ethan's figure. Now that he had been discovered, Ethan wasted no time on subtlety. "Call out." Ethan unleashed an ice blade, striking a lethal force against the lean man's skull. Brain matter mixed with crystalline shards scattered across the ground. Having reached master-level proficiency, the ice blade moved with impossible speed. The thin man died without a sound. However, a body falling to the ground makes noise. This caught the fat man's attention. "Aaron, how come you fell over while using the toilet?" The moment he turned his head, an ice blade materialized in his pupils, growing larger and more menacing. This corpulent man was merely a second-tier ability user who had awakened a sea-level power. Yet, the ice blade Ethan unleashed exploded his skull as easily as a stone striking ripe fruit. "You two scumbags deserve to die," Ethan stated with chilling casualness. The Black Cult experimental base. A sterile meeting room. Several third-tier ability users stood in a semicircle, their gazes fixed on the man seated at the head of the table. He was draped in finery that seemed utterly incongruous with the brutal setting. In his left hand, he slowly swirled a half-glass of deep red wine. He then raised the glass to his lips and drained the remaining liquid in a single, languid gulp. Is this truly the vintage of the human world? It possesses a remarkable depth, Lord Caldwell murmured, setting the empty glass down with an air of satisfied contemplation. A third-tier ability user cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Lord Caldwell, I must disagree with your proposed approach, even given your standing in headquarters." The man known as Lord Caldwell smiled, a faint, predatory curve of the lips. He tilted his head, his gaze sweeping over the assembled group. "Is that a consensus?" "Wes," another man affirmed quickly, "studying ferocious beasts is one thing, but utilizing humans as mere mediums, it crosses a line, indeed." The third chimed in, his voice laced with caution. "Such an undertaking would require recruiting too many people. If the authorities ever discovered our methods, the consequences would be unimaginable." A heavy silence settled, thick with unspoken fear and self-preservation. Lord Caldwell watched them, his smile not faltering. "Since that is your collective wisdom." He rose abruptly, a sudden burst of energy propelling him forward. With a casual flick of his wrist, he shattered the wine glass in his hand into glittering shards. The next instant, an invisible, crushing force erupted from Lord Caldwell, a powerful mental wave that struck the three ability users who had awakened B-level powers. It was pure, overwhelming psychic pressure. Under the immense assault, they staggered, their knees buckling one after another until they were forced to kneel. Their brows furrowed in agony, their faces contorted with visible pain. Lord Caldwell reached out, his fingers closing around the throat of the first man who had spoken. This was no longer merely a pressure wave. It was an absolute, suffocating vice grip that promised instant death. The victim gasped, feeling the cold certainty of oblivion creeping into his lungs. Instinctively, he clawed at Lord Caldwell's wrist, desperate to stop the chokehold. But his strength failed him, his hands not even lift in protest. Finally, with a contemptuous release, Lord Caldwell withdrew his grip, and the crushing mental pressure vanished. The first man collapsed like a discarded fish, gasping raggedly for breath, his face slick with sweat, the sheer terror of survival etched into every line. As the psychic weight lifted, the others slowly rose to their feet. "I hope such an incident never happens again." Lord Caldwell's gaze swept across the room, cold and utterly devoid of mercy. "Yes," Broob spoke in a trembling, unified chorus. On Ethan's side, the fat man was bulky, his clothes hanging loosely upon him. With practiced ease, Ethan slipped out of the ill-fitting garments and pulled them over himself. He also found a small card tucked into the skinny man's pocket. "This must be some kind of identification," he mused to himself. He continued walking down the path until the corridor opened into a room. He paused, then moved quickly away from it, heading southeast through the Black Cult's experimental base. The moment he stepped outside, the air hit in a noxious blend of metallic blood and harsh disinfectant that made his stomach clench. After a brief adjustment to the scent, They had only taken a few steps when a member of the cult approached them. He wore a blue lab coat, suggesting he had been conducting experiments nearby. Ethan felt a flicker of tension, a primal nervousness, but his expression remained perfectly neutral. Fortunately, the man merely brushed past him without even glancing in his direction. Soon Ethan reached a door. Inside, he estimated there were 50 cages. "Hey, you over there! What are you doing here?" a voice barked out from behind him. A shout rang out again. "This is an experimental zone. What is this patrolman in black doing?" "Sigh," Ethan muttered under his breath. So it was inevitable. He had anticipated discovery, he knew the walls of this base were thin. But what if the others here, given their sheer strength, were discovered? They were merely rabble. Ethan fired a sliver of absolute cold. The blade struck the patrolman's throat with surgical precision. In an instant, the body separated from its head, falling heavily to the ground so fast that the man didn't even have time to scream for help. He walked to the next door and paused, surprised to find it locked by an access card system. Ethan turned back to the fallen guard and retrieved a pristine white keycard from the man's right pocket. He also quickly changed into the discarded coat. It was just fabric. It wouldn't last long anyway. The door hissed open, and Ethan stepped inside. The room was vast, several hundred square meters of contained horror. Inside were dozens of cages holding normal animals that had been grotesquely grafted with the meat of ferocious beasts. Many creatures had mutated, developing distinct, savage characteristics. These were exactly the specimens Ethan had come for. More than a dozen researchers worked diligently at tables scattered throughout the room, preparing potions that baffled him entirely. Even as he entered, they did not look up, not even to cast a glance. A deafening alarm shrieked, echoing through every corner of the experimental base. Someone had discovered the body on the floor and immediately sounded the alert. "Alarm! Intruders have breached containment." The researchers froze, their work momentarily forgotten. Only when several experimenters managed to rise did their heads drop automatically to the ground. This is the terrifying speed of a master-level ice blade. The remaining personnel stared in paralyzed horror at the sudden massacre unfolding before them. In the blink of an eye, several companions were dead. Iceblade whispered, his voice low and detached. He felt no psychological burden in ending these lives. Then, he moved again. Ice blast. Ice blast. He unleashed the explosion repeatedly, shattering cages and killing the monstrous beasts within. He gained evolution points from defeating a Tier 1 low-rank ferocious beast named Shadow Cat. He also gained evolution points after defeating a Tier 2 lower-rank ferocious beast called Great-Handed Duck, and 100 evolution points from defeating a 2 low-rank ferocious beast called Flower Dog. The sound of shattering ice rang out again and again. The bloodlust within him did not surge dramatically, but the numbers on his system panel grew rapidly. But at that precise moment, a large contingent of heavily armed black cult members had gathered outside and were rushing toward the source of the alarm. "Something is terribly wrong. An intruder has breached our perimeter." In the opulent meeting hall where Lord Caldwell and the third-tier ability users gathered, a frantic member of the Black Blood cult rushed forward to issue the alarm. Lord Caldwell, however, remained utterly composed, his posture radiating an almost bored authority. "What is the fuss? This is nearly a golden opportunity, a chance to unleash these magnificent beasts and test their full might." Lord Cord, however, remained utterly composed, his posture radiating an almost bored authority. "What is the fuss? This is nearly a golden opportunity, a chance to unleash these magnificent beasts and test their full might." He dismissed the panic with a languid wave of his hand. 1,000-mile dike can be breached by the smallest ant hole. Similarly, this outsider, no matter how powerful, could not withstand the combined fury of so many ferocious beasts. "And all of us have gathered here," the cult member stammered, gesturing vaguely at the assembled group. "It's nothing," Lord Caldwell dismissed smoothly. "We can simply let them witness firsthand the caliber of the creatures we have created." With a final flick of his wrist, he waved away the concern. "Very well." The others dispersed, resuming their tasks and leaving the meeting room to its own devices. Lord Caldwell remained seated, refusing to leave. Instead, he activated the surveillance cameras, casting the hall in a cold, watchful glow. He poured himself another glass of deep red wine. bringing his lips for a measured sip. Watching the ensuing chaos unfold over a fine vintage, that was the true entertainment. Before entering the Black Blood cult's experimental base, Ethan had carried 21,000 evolution points on his system panel. Now, it stood at 26,000. The approximately 50 ferocious beasts provided a total of 6,000 points, a sum that seemed negligible. Yet, he reminded himself these were merely first and second tier lower and middle level specimens. The true bounty awaited when the third tier behemoths fell. With this calculation guiding him, Ethan slipped out of the room. But even as he moved, a deep, resonant tremor vibrated through the ground from afar, growing steadily closer to his position. Could they have released all of them? A slow smile curved Ethan's lips. Excellent. This saves me the tedious chore of hunting them down one by one. Next, he activated his detective technique, and a precise map bloomed in his mind, pinpointing the exact location of the newcomers. As expected, they had amassed not only a staggering horde of beasts, but also dozens of heavily armed Black Blood cult members. The creatures posed little threat, they were merely numerous. Ethan, on the other hand, commanded both the ice explosion technique and the devastating extreme ice illusion killing array. With his internal reservoir of yuan energy replenished and the potent potions in his spatial ring, dispatching this entire menagerie would be an exercise in effortless grace. And as for the heavily armed cultists, Ethan felt even less apprehension. Why was this world lauded as a realm of superpowers? Because undeniably, superhumans were the undisputed kings who ruled it all. Ethan spent 9,000 evolution points to elevate the A-level skill Frozen Shield from advanced proficiency to master. After absorbing a massive influx of memories, he now possessed an intuitive understanding of its full potential. The master-level shield could easily deflect ordinary bullets, a feat that would have been utterly inconceivable in the world Ethan had known before. More than 40 ferocious beasts, accompanied by a dozen or so cult members, streamed into view, arriving one after another. Extreme ice illusion killing array. Ethan lowered his head slightly, gathering his focus. In the next instant, 15 spectral ice swords materialized simultaneously around him, forming an imposing halo of deadly potential. The Black Blood cult members watched, completely stunned by the display. "You are handsome, aren't you, beasts?" Charge, a third-tier ability user at the rear of the group, pressed a remote control. The beasts surged forward in a terrifying tide. Seeing this, Ethan merely waved his hand, and another dozen ice swords flew forth. The vast majority of the ferocious beasts were pierced instantly upon contact. Not only was their skin lacerated by the blade, but the pure ice elemental energy conducted through the steel immediately began to crystallize beneath their hides. A layer upon layer of frost formed rapidly, severely restricting their movement. This was nearly a near miss. If one were struck directly by an ice sword, death would be instantaneous and absolute. Of course, Ethan wouldn't afford them the luxury of standing still. Frozen Shield, a barrage of frost spears. After draining another bottle of Tier 3 energy potion, he enveloped himself in a shimmering layer of ice shield, immediately following it with the frost spear combo. Each shot generated an impact force measured in tons, and this power escalated exponentially with every consecutive blast, quickly reaching a devastating peak of 10 tons. In moments, half the beasts lay dead, while Ethan remained untouched, his movements fluid and economical. The smug smiles on the faces of the Black Blood cult members evaporated, replaced by an expression of stark terror. Most were first-tier ability users, their strength was inherently limited. Hiding behind the fallen pack, they raised their rifles and began to fire. But without professional training, their shots were clumsy, mediocre at best. Even if Ethan stood still, they might not even manage a hit, let alone when he moved with such speed. Back in the conference room. Initially, Odd Caldwell watched the surveillance footage with an air of smug anticipation, eager to see Ethan torn apart by the beasts. After all, strictly speaking, Ethan was barely human. It was a mortal body animated by the consciousness of a ferocious beast. Such a being would find sheer pleasure in watching one creature dismember another. But Ethan's subsequent actions caused the smile to falter. This superhuman. He was incredibly powerful. He narrowed his eyes, realizing that this wasn't just about skill level, it was about proficiency. Yes, skill proficiency, a factor of monumental importance. It was rumored that a mere level 1 difference in mastery could double a skill's effectiveness. No. Lord Caldwell abandoned the meeting room. He had decided to take matters into his own hands. My body. He estimated he stood near the apex of the 4th tier, an A+ level ability user, possessing an extremely rare mental aptitude. Killing Ethan should not be a problem. It took him merely 10 minutes before Lord Caldwell finally emerged from the conference room and approached Ethan. The beasts were almost all dead, but several cult members remained standing. After all, eliminating them wouldn't grant Ethan any evolution points. The moment Lord Caldwell came into view, Ethan's pupils dilated instantly. What? He vividly remembered that his mental detection had not registered this man. However, that merely smiled slightly as he opened the system panel. That smile, seemingly tranquil and accepting, concealed a deadly intent far colder than any ice spell. My superpower can be broken through. Ethan's pupils dilated, reflecting a sudden, startling realization. Superpowers were not merely gifts, they were the very bedrock of superhuman strength. He remembered how easily he had dispatched a mid-tier first-order beast mere days after his own awakening, a feat impossible for those with only C or D level abilities. S-rank capabilities were already rare and formidable, yet here he was, poised to do something even more extraordinary. Upgrade the core of his ability itself. The sheer thrill of it was intoxicating. Without a moment's hesitation, Ethan pressed the button on the panel. He spent 100,000 evolution points. His energy purity rose from 73% to 80%. His special ability upgraded from Ice Crown S to Frozen Throne SS. In the next instant, an icy blue luminescence erupted, followed by a cascade of chilling cold that seemed to weave endless ice and snow into existence. The frigid aura spread outward from Ethan, continuously expanding until it enveloped everything in its path. The remaining cultists watched him, their initial shock giving way to misplaced confidence. They assumed he was immobilized, trapped by the sheer spectacle of the frost. He stood motionless, shielded a glittering layer of ice and snow. Surely now that he wasn't dodging or weaving through attacks, they could simply open fire. But imagination, as always, proved far more beautiful than reality. Before their rifles could even be raised, some were lifted into the air like discarded dolls, while others were swallowed whole by a sudden surge of blinding snow and ice. The extreme cold was instantaneous. It froze them solid, leaving them too weak to lift a finger. Even Jan Darren, with his A-level mental ability and a physical body advanced to the upper 4th tier, would have been overwhelmed. Only after erecting another layer of psychic defense could he barely stand and force open his eyes. His gaze fell upon Ethan. All he saw was a vortex of ice crystals spinning rapidly around Ethan, refracting an almost blinding, crystalline cold light. Beneath him, a magnificent throne began to coalesce from condensed ice. It looked impossibly ancient, etched with intricate, forgotten glyphs. His pupils and hair had taken on the deep hue of glacial blue, utterly devoid of emotion. And above his head, a crown spun from ice and snow completed the tableau. Lord Caldwell's body trembled slightly. He couldn't help but feel a profound sense of awe, as if the mount seated upon that frozen dais was not merely powerful, but truly imperial. Interesting, profoundly interesting, Lord Caldwell murmured inwardly. Then a predatory thought surfaced: I must test your strength. After all, this was just one of his many disposable clones. Its demise meant nothing. Once Ethan's superpower evolution completed, the surrounding aura receded, allowing Lord Caldwell to move freely again. With a practiced motion, he summoned his special ability. A razor-sharp mental blade materialized in his hand. He advanced with measured steps, rushing toward Ethan. The rapidly moving figure left a long, abrupt wake of disturbance on the snow-covered ground. Extreme ice illusion killing array. Seeing the enemy approach, Ethan's gaze sharpened, and he spoke a single, soft word. The next moment, 15 ice swords erupted around him in rapid succession, spinning into unison at blinding speed. But they were different, longer, larger, far more devastating than before. Kal Outh. Ethan raised his hand, and the array of ice blades descended like a crystalline storm. The velocity was so immense that Lord Caldwell had no chance to evade. One strike shattered the psychic shield, a second pierced through his body. The potent elemental energy flooded into him, swiftly sealing off his organs, meridians, and blood flow. As a pure psychic being, his physical resilience was inherently limited. Within seconds, he went limp. He gained 40,000 evolution points for slaying an avatar of the supreme-level high-ranking ferocious beast, Soul Devourer King. Witnessing that even Lord Caldwell, dispatched from headquarters, could not withstand a single move from this man, the remaining members of the Black Blood cult lost all will to resist. They scattered and fled into the depths, trying to escape. Too late. Ethans formed into a streak of cold light, closing the distance in an instant. A barrage of frost spears. A cultist body was pierced by the cold river sky-splitting spear. Ice blade. Another member crumpled at the impact of a razor-sharp ice blade. You stay away. One man whimpered from behind a corner, trembling violently. Die. Ethan uttered only that single word, a death sentence sealed by absolute power. Soon, all the fleeing cultists were felled, one by Ethan. None were spared. His detective technique, now honed to master-level proficiency, allowed him to pinpoint their location with chilling accuracy. No matter how far they ran, there was no escape. They were all vicious, wicked souls who deserved nothing but oblivion. They deserved to die. After dispatching the last enemy, Ethan sank onto the ground and opened his system panel. His spirit reading was 1,462 Hz. His ki and blood reserves measured 3,745 calories. He vaguely recalled that before entering this underground world, his mental state was 1,024 H and his blood energy was 3,121 calories. Now, they stood at 1,462 H say, and 3,754 calories. After a brief analysis, he noted an improvement of nearly 40% in his mental acuity, and about 20% in his vital reserves. Of course, true growth would never be judged by mere data points. The real breakthrough lay within the ice-type elemental energy coursing through him. First was capacity. Ethan felt that the reservoir of his internal energy had nearly doubled, perhaps even more. After wielding the extreme ice illusion-killing array, he hadn't felt a hint of exhaustion. In fact, he could use it again. Second, from 73% to 80%. This was like comparing the blood of common men to that of true mythic vampires. Every fraction of improvement held immense power. And then came the hidden benefit. Ethan found himself astonished. After evolving his superpower from S level to SS level, his ability to suppress bloodlust had reached an entirely new plateau. He could now hunt ferocious beasts in this underground world for at least 2 consecutive weeks without losing control of his savage nature. It was clear. The rapid surge in Ethan's strength, the level that left others breathless with awe, stemmed directly from one source: evolution points. The longer he remained within the depths, the greater the harvest would be. This was a brilliance beyond measure. Beyond his superhuman abilities, another matter weighed heavily on Ethan's mind: the system notification that sounded every time he claimed a life. He gained 40,000 evolution points for slaying an avatar of the supreme-level high-ranking ferocious beast, the Soul Devourer King. A supreme-level high-ranking ferocious beast. The Soul Devouring King. Ethan felt a profound sense of bewilderment. These terms were utterly foreign to him. Perhaps Master Thorn will know what these mean. He mused inwardly. But trapped within the underground world, he had no means of contacting the outside. He would have to wait until his escape plan was complete. The day was waning, and tomorrow's hunt awaited. Rest was necessary. The next morning, Ethan left the Black Blood cult's experimental base behind him. It was worth noting that beyond the beasts and personnel within, he had not disturbed a single thing. Once clear of this place, he would naturally report to the Emerald March government. Perhaps when specialized teams arrived, they could uncover some vital information. Ethan resumed his hunt through the wilderness. Half a day later, after defeating 2 third-tier lower-level beasts and numerous miscellaneous creatures, he amassed another 10,000 evolution points. His total now stood at 50,000. If I'm not going to advance my cultivation level, what is the point of hoarding these points? He saw his evolution points were 50,000, and his realm level was mid-tier 3. With a decisive press, Ethan channeled his will. Add points directly? His evolution points dropped by 50,000. His realm advanced from middle tier 3 to upper tier 3. Instantly, a torrent of crystalline, ice-type elemental energy erupted within him. The ether, once as placid as still water, became violently turbulent and intensely potent. He sank to the ground, closing his eyes against the surge. Momentum burst forth in layers. Nearby trees snapped like dry twigs, birds fled their suddenly unstable nests. Moreover, colossal icicles began forming around him, lending an aura of sacredness and inviolability to his immediate space. The process absorbing and stabilizing this raw elemental power was grueling, lasting for 4 uninterrupted hours. 4 hours later, Ethan slowly opened his icy blue pupils. He summoned a control panel. His spirit rating had improved by 200 Hz, and his vital energy reserves swelled by 400 calories. Ethan felt not just a deeper understanding of his own limits, but an internal energy that pulsed with the vigor of a dragon and a tiger, an inexhaustible wellspring. Upper Furthry achieved, he murmured, a thrill running through him. I am only 1 step from the 4th tier. He remembered it vividly. Lost Ruins number 7. Let's continue hunting. Ethan mouthed, transforming in an instant into a streak of cold light that hurtled forward with lightning speed. He gained 1,000 evolution points for defeating the 2nd tier superior ferocious beast, the blue-spotted tiger. With a single casual strike, he felled the 2nd tier superior beast. Ethan then expended a significant amount of mental energy to expand his detection range. His method was always the same: sweep a wide area first, then close in while maintaining a tight sensory net. Through the feedback channeled by his mind, a ferocious beast instantly snagged his attention. It was a lizard-like creature with a fiery tail and a body the color of dried blood. This isn't it, the shadow salamander. Ethan's eyes flared with sudden intensity. Since his mental attributes had significantly improved, the debilitating effect of the shadow fire lizard on perception was no longer as potent. It was precisely because of that creature that he had been forced to relinquish those few precious S-grade herbs, evening primrose. The pills made from its powder were miraculous healers. Hempha finally found you. Ethan sneered, a cold edge entering his voice. It's time for you to pay the debt for these evening primroses. But before he could act, Ethan sensed several figures moving in the direction of the shadow salamander. Spiritual power detection only registered external forms. Their identities remained hidden. Yet, one figure felt strangely familiar, as if he had crossed paths with him before. I hope they don't steal my prey. Ethan thought to himself, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. Revenge was important, but this beast, a mid-4th tier specimen, promised an immense haul of evolution points, far surpassing what he could earn from low-level kills in a single day. He quickened his pace toward the shadow salamander's location. Meanwhile, on another stretch of forest, a team of superhumans marched forward. If Ethan were present, he would instantly recognize them as the group Jackson had joined. They had taken on several assignments at the school before arriving here. One task required collecting fire lizard tails, a level A mission with 10 requirements and a reward of 500 credits. They had collected 8, only 2 more remained. Suddenly, Jackson glanced to the side and spotted a beast with flames trailing from its tail. Because they were deep in the woods and separated by over 1,000 meters, he could only make out the conspicuous tail and the general outline of the creature. Its specific features were obscured. In reality, this was no ordinary fire lizard. It was a far more powerful mid-level 4th tier beast, the shadow fire lizard. Hey, it's a fire lizard! Jackson exclaimed in surprise. We're... The others stopped dead in their tracks. There, Jackson pointed, his hand outstretched toward the location of the shadow fire lizard. Following his gaze, every eye turned to that spot. A fire lizard. Is this supposed to be a fire lizard? The team captain's expression hardened with sudden gravity. What is this thing? It's significantly larger than any typical specimen, and its coloration is wrong. That's a mid-4th tier shadow fire lizard. Run, the captain shouted urgently, pulling out a swiftness pill from his spatial ring. Shadow salamander. The others sharpened their focus, quickly taking their own pills, preparing to flee for their lives. Just then, a massive ice spear, formed of solidified elemental force, hurtled toward them. Its speed generated a palpable sonic boom. The shadow fire lizard was caught completely off guard. The colossal ice spear pierced its head with devastating force. In an instant, black blood splattered across the forest floor. What is going on? Is this ice spear truly so potent and so swift? Wes! Not only did it catch the shadow salamander completely off guard, but it struck right at its head. The group had already swallowed their speed-enhancing pills and were bracing for a retreat. Yet the sudden sonic boom from the ice spear forced them to turn back. What they witnessed next stole the breath from every chest, leaving them gaping in stunned silence. The shadowfire lizard did not fall immediately after its skull was pierced. Instead, its body erupted in a torrent of black and crimson flames, a heat that must have surpassed 2,000 degrees Celsius. The sheer intensity warped the very air around it, making the atmosphere shimmer like liquid glass. Wait, it's not completely dead yet. Even from this distance I can feel an immense wave of heat. Run. The group broke into a desperate sprint. Meanwhile, the ice spear slowly began to melt, dissolving back into a puddle of pure water, stripped entirely of its elemental energy. But under the ferocious blaze of the flames, that pure water instantly flashed into vapor, vanishing without leaving a single trace. Ethan mused inwardly. Once a beast reaches the 4th rank, it is indeed incomparable to those below. Its vitality is incredibly tenacious. But alas, that is where your endurance ends. He launched another ice spear. The shadow fire lizard still roared with black and red fire, though its ice-type elemental energy was not entirely depleted, coupled with the grievous wounds. Its movements were sluggish, rendering it incapable of dodging Ethan's next attack. With an arc of impossible grace, Ethan's second spear pierced the creature's head once more. A thick gulf of blood spurted out. The shadow salamander was not so fortunate this time. Its remaining life force proved insufficient to withstand a second assault. Soon, the beast went utterly still, lifeless. "White, run!" The captain's voice cut through the panic, forcing the fleeing group to halt and turn back. This ferocious beast is dead just like that. Awe struck everyone as they turned their gaze toward a dark figure slowly emerging from the dense shadows of the forest. A face with resolute handsomeness, a frame tall and impeccably upright. Jackson recognized the figure instantly. It was Ethan. Ethan. Jackson stood frozen, utterly stunned. The others were merely impressed that he had managed to subdue such a powerful creature. They could only marvel at his mastery. But Jackson knew him. They were classmates, freshmen at Athagard Academy. And what did he see now? Ethan had just slain a mid-level 4th-tier ferocious beast. This was already operating at a senior level, wasn't it? No, to be precise, they were considered formidable even among the seniors. It had been barely a month since the freshman competition across the 4 prestigious universities. How rapidly had Ethan grown? In comparison, Jackson was still struggling to join his team on missions in the underground world. Ethan, meanwhile, had surpassed his entire team's collective strength, even with S+ level superpower awakening. The magnitude of it left Jackson feeling a sudden, sharp pang of inadequacy. At that moment, a system notification chimed softly in Andrew's ears. You have defeated the Tier 4 mid-tier ferocious beast, the Shadow Fire Lizard, gaining 40,000 evolution points. Ethan was oblivious to the storm of thoughts raging through Andrew's mind. Even if he were aware, he wouldn't have given it a second thought. His sole focus was on reaping his reward. He darted forward, drawing his Grade A alloy dagger from his spatial ring, and driving it forcefully into the creature's tail. The flash of the blade created an impossibly smooth cut, and the severed tail fell cleanly into Ethan's waiting hand. Next came the crucial part, the crystallization. This crystal was the very source of primordial energy within the beast's body. Its outer shell was notoriously resistant, even to Grade A alloy. Fortunately, Ethan's Frost River Sky-splitting spear, having been infused with sufficient ice-type elemental energy, could achieve a hardness rivaling S-grade alloys. With that advantage, Ethan sliced open the Shadow Fire Lizard's carapace. Nestled within was a dark red crystal, still gleaming with a faint, internal warmth. He carefully plucked it out. When the crystal settled in his palm, he felt a slight, tingling, but it was nothing. Ethan simply stored it away into his spatial ring. Done. He clapped his hands together in quiet satisfaction. He acknowledged Jackson's presence but had no intention of stopping to greet him. With that, he turned and walked away. A few hours later, night fell. Ethan summoned his companion beast, Piper, from the containment sphere. The man and the serpent settled down to enjoy a barbecue to their heart's content. Perfect timing. Little Ice, having rested deeply in the containment sphere, could now act as Ethan's vigilant lookout through the night. This meant Ethan no longer needed to maintain a light sleep, just to keep his mind alert. He could finally sink into true, deep slumber, granting him profound comfort. In the sky above, Streaks of lightning flashed, followed by blinding bursts of light and deafening roars. The thunderclap was like a massive drum beat, jolting Ethan awake. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and stepped out of the tent. It was only just beginning to lighten in the pre-dawn hours. Just as he reached into his spatial ring for water and food to replenish his energy for the morning, another bolt of lightning ripped across the sky. But Ethan wasn't surprised. The weather in the deep vaults was notoriously volatile. Thunder and rain were common occurrences. After a satisfying breakfast, Ethan donned his battle armor, stowed the tent back into his spatial ring, and prepared for the day's hunt. First, he activated the S-rank skill, Detective Technique, to sense any nearby ferocious beasts. After receiving the feedback through his mental energy, however, Ethan couldn't help but narrow his eyes in confusion. He discovered a profound void, a conspicuous absence of life in a specific direction. In other words, there were no ferocious beasts anywhere in that sector. The missing corner lay to the southwest. Ethan pulled out a map from his spatial ring and confirmed it. There was a massive canyon stretching out in that direction. Could this be related to the canyon? With that thought guiding him, Ethan changed course and began walking southwest. He had just expended significant mental energy and needed time to recover. When he reached a point about 11 kilometers from the edge of the canyon, he cautiously probed the area with a small trickle of his mental power. Deep within the vast chasm, violent purple lightning scattered in all directions, flashing incessantly around the gorge walls. At the very center of the electrical storm stood a gigantic, bear-like ferocious beast. Could this bear-shaped creature be on the verge of breaking through to an even higher realm? Ethan murmured softly, his voice barely carrying over the crackling thunder. This colossal beast loomed, a terrifying silhouette 9 meters tall and easily weighing over 100 tons. Ethan did not recognize it. Yet, the Heart in Aethergod Academy app housed an impossibly vast database, a repository of knowledge that made identification almost effortless. After inputting key descriptors thunder, 9 meters high, diamond-shaped for the application responded with startling accuracy and speed. It was identified as a thunderstorm demon bear, 4th tier high level. Furthermore, this specimen was currently undergoing a breakthrough to the upper realm of the 4th tier. A thunderstorm demon bear breaking through to the upper 4th tier. Ethan breathed out, his pace quickening instantly. His immediate impulse was clear. Interrupt the beast's ascension and kill it to reap an astronomical harvest of evolution points. But he weighed another option, waiting until the creature reached the 5th tier. However, facing a 5th tier monster was uncharted territory for him. His confidence wavered. If he failed to secure the evolution points, it would be a minor setback. The true danger lay in survival. If he perished here, he would leave behind such a monstrous entity deep within the underground world, a threat that could destabilize every superhuman heading toward Ironwood, Borrowed 2 in Crystal Haven. This was too great a risk. Ethan made his choice: immediate confrontation. He approached the canyon edge. A kilometer out, the ground fractured into deep fissures, treacherous gaps that promised a fatal slip for the unwary. The beast's aftershocks were thunderous, vibrating through the earth and making every step an effort of sheer will. A massive bolt of purple lightning ripped through the soil directly before him, blasting a hole nearly 10 centimeters deep. A thick layer of charred black residue coated the entrance to the cavern. That was close, Ethan muttered, exhaling slowly. Had that strike found him, even if it hadn't caused grievous injury, the pain would have been immense. He instantly enveloped himself in an icy shield. The residual energy from the lightning dissipated against the barrier, granting him the necessary moment to advance further. Soon he stood at the precipice of the canyon. Following his gaze, he looked into the depths. The thunderstorm demon bear had its eyes tightly shut, while surrounding it raw, raging lightning seemed trapped, leaping wildly in futile arcs. Still attempting a breakthrough, Ethan challenged. He channeled his elemental energy, forming a spear of pure ice, and hurled it at the beast with all his might. A barrage of ice spears flew forth, but even as they struck, the thunderstorm demon bear opened its eyes. A guttural roar erupted, and it rose to its full 9-meter height. Its massive paws caught the incoming spears, crushing them into splinters before swiping through the air. It then scanned its surroundings, spotting Ethan. The beast surged forward, scrambling toward the edge of the canyon and beginning a rapid ascent over protruding rocks. Its breakthrough is interrupted. Ethan murmured, a faint smile touching his lips. It must be furious. He felt a perverse satisfaction. Humans and beasts were eternal adversaries, a truth as immutable as gravity. As the thunderstorm demon bear climbed, Ethan reached the canyon edge and unleashed another volley of ice spears. But the beast was prepared. It summoned an internal lightning shield that shimmered around its body. The first spear struck, causing several hairline fractures in the thunder barrier. The second followed, and with a sharp crack, the shield shattered. 3 more spears pierced the creature's flesh. Ethan's speed was relentless, averaging 1 shot per second. By the time the beast could reform its defensive lightning shell, Ethan had already broken through it and dealt another blow. Yet the thunderstorm demon bear's resilience was formidable. It absorbed 2 ice spear impacts as if they were mere scratches. Worse still, its climbing speed was terrifying. In just 6 seconds, it traversed the entire canyon depth. Ethan had raced, a wicked idea crystallizing into place. Ice spear. He launched another projectile. The thunderstorm bear sneered contemptuously and raised its lightning shield again. If this barrier holds, Ethan thought, I can finally ascend to it. By then this annoying pest hindering my evolution will be completely under my control. But the beast's expectation was wrong. Instead of attacking the creature, Ethan targeted the rock face beneath its gripping paws. Ethan's attacks became more ferocious, his courage mounting with each strike. The ice spears in his hand reached an impact force measured in tens of thousands of kilograms. With a final, shattering blow, the rock disintegrated. The thunderstorm demon bear lost its purchase and plummeted into the canyon depths, landing heavily on its rear end. It fell into a chasm nearly 100 meters deep. Considering its weight over 100 tons, the impact must have been catastrophic. It landed a heap of pain, thrashing its massive haunches while glaring with pure, incandescent rage. Extreme ice illusion killing array. Ethan did not hesitate. 15 enormous ice swords materialized around him. With a wave of his hand, the 15 blades descended in a deadly curtain. The thunderstorm demon bear rode a sound that carried the force of thunder itself. It managed to shatter several of the initial ice swords. But it failed to anticipate Ethan's mastery. The original impact had already struck its vulnerable posterior with 2 more devastating blows. The beast cried out, momentarily losing focus in agony. Not over yet. Ethan's icy energy was still abundant. He unleashed the extreme ice illusion killing array once more. This time, the thunderstorm bear reacted slower, managing to summon a desperate lightning shield, a barrier that could withstand any third-tier monster. But it was nothing against the sheer force of Ethan's ice magic. Suddenly, shocking wounds erupted across the beast's hide. The elemental energy surged in, spreading like frost from within. Before long, the thunderstorm demon bear shuddered, its massive body failing. With mere average-powered ice blades, the creature could not withstand the assault. It collapsed to the ground, slowly losing its breath until it finally went still. The moment the thunderstorm demon bear lay utterly still, a chime of pure energy echoed in Ethan's mind. He received a notification stating that he had defeated the Tier 4 high-rank ferocious beast, Thunderstorm Bear, and gained 50,000 evolution points. With that notification, Ethan began to draw upon every last reserve of ice-type elemental energy within his core. A soft, crystalline whoosh accompanied the flow as he meticulously sculpted an immensely stable slide of pure ice. Though the massive reservoir of power had been completely drained, a wave of profound weakness immediately washed over him. Yet every part of this fallen behemoth was a treasure. To merely observe it would be torture for his collector's instinct. He slid down the crystalline chute, landing with a soft thump at the bottom of the canyon floor. From above, the scene might have been unremarkable, but here, in the deep basin, the devastation was stark and absolute. The ground was scarred by countless craters left by the bear's raging lightning strikes, a testament to unimaginable power. Fortunately, the thunderstorm bear had fallen directly into this natural depression, granting it a slight advantage of terrain. Ethan approached the carcass, drawing in a grade alloy dagger. He began the careful process of dissection. But when the hardened metal met the bear's thick, resilient fur, the blade shuddered and failed. No matter how hard he pressed, The grade A alloy could not penetrate the hide. A dagger allowed for surgical precision, ensuring no valuable material was wasted. But its edge simply wasn't sharp enough. "I need to acquire an S-grade alloy dagger on my return," Ethan murmured to himself. His only recourse was his own cold river sky-splitting spear. Infused with abundant ice elemental energy, the spear's hardness could rival that of S-grade alloys. Accompanied by a tearing shriek, the bear's tough hide finally gave way. The instant the thunderstorm bear's flesh and blood were exposed to the air, several arcs of vivid purple lightning leaped up from its body. Ethan knew this was the residual manifestation of the creature's elemental energy. Once that power dissipated entirely, he would be left with the true spoils: bear bile, heart, crystallized organs, components of immense value. He systematically harvested every valuable component, storing them within his spatial ring. With the carcass stripped bare, Ethan turned and left the canyon depths, resuming his search for more formidable beasts. The detection radius was centered on him, spanning a colossal 22 kilometers. It felt like an endless expanse of territory. Yet, in the vastness of this underground world, it amounted to nothing at all. Furthermore, 3 ferocious beasts were not as common as weeds. They could not simply be found by wishing for them. Time slipped away until 1 week later. On this day, a new notification chimed. He had defeated the Tier 2 high-rank beast, Running Pig, and gained 600 evolution points. A muscular, frantic pig was drinking at a nearby stream when its head dropped to the muddy ground. From the dense shadows of the forest, a tall, handsome figure emerged: Ethan. At this moment, his evolution points had accumulated, reaching 90,000. Ethan's mind stirred, and the control panel materialized before him. He saw details regarding his name, Ethan. His evolution points total of 90,000, energy purity at 80%, superpower, the Frozen Throne, which was an S-grade ability, realm status as upper 3rd tier, indicate upward progress, spirit level at 1662 Hz, Q and blood reserves at 4145 calories, and other skills including gun mastery, melee combat, ice shard ring, ice flash, ice blade, frozen shield, ast, detective skill, extreme ice illusion killing array, and frost spear combo. He also saw his body tempering technique, profound nether ice soul body at S-grade, 4th level, and his companion beast, an ice-piercing python, which was Tier 2 upper, upward progress, and T5 upper. My cultivation level can be improved, he mused. November is fast approaching. Without hesitation, he decisively pressed the upward arrow button on the panel. He lost 90,000 evolution points. His realm advanced from upper 3rd tier to lower 4th tier. As the points vanished from the display, Ethan was instantly engulfed by an unprecedented surge of cold power that erupted within his very bones. It was a chilling force so intense that even he, an ice-type master, found it overwhelming. He closed his eyes and sank to the ground. What Ethan could not see was the terrifying elemental backlash. Massive spikes of burst violently from the earth. Nearby trees were snapped like twigs. Flowers and plants were ripped from the soil, and the nearby stream froze solid from within. The temperature in the vicinity plummeted by dozens of degrees Celsius in a single breath. Time passed with dizzying speed. 4 hours melted away. The ice elemental energy within Ethan's body finally stabilized. He opened his eyes and exhaled a long, steady breath. Comfortable. He felt profoundly powerful, as if every muscle held an untapped reservoir of unparalleled strength. His thoughts moved with crystalline swiftness. He sensed that the maximum detection range of his skill, divine detective technique, had expanded from 22 kilometers to 24 kilometers. Though only a 2-kilometer increase, it represented nearly a 20% boost in coverage. Let's see how the attributes have improved. Ethan recalled the panel. 2 major statistics appeared before him: mental state at 1962 Hz, and Q-Bive reserves at 4945 calories. The staggering increase made Ethan gasp in shock. It was monstrous, absolutely terrifying. His mentality had jumped by 300 Hz, and his physical reserves increased by 800 calories. This pushed his mind toward the 2000 HC mark and his vitality toward 5,000 kilocalories. Such a powerful humanoid monster achieved only 4 months after awakening his superpowers. If he told this story to anyone, who would believe it? Yet it was an undeniable truth. There is still room for my bloodthirsty energy to continue hunting. Ethan activated detective skill. The location of nearby ferocious beasts became vividly apparent. But among them, several human figures stood out. There were 6 of them, 5 men and 1 woman, walking directly toward his position. However, judging by the faint feedback emanating from their mental energies, they were all merely third-tier ability users. Even if any harbored malicious intent, Ethan was perfectly equipped to handle them.